I sat in the lawyer's office. The room was quiet, too quiet. My hand shook as I held the papers. The last thing my wife ever signed. 45 years of marriage, one lifetime of sacrifice, and now, $12 million on a single sheet of paper. My son stood across from me. Mark, my only child. He didn't cry at her funeral. He didn't hug me when we buried her. He just waited for this moment. He leaned close, smirk on his face. "Dad," he whispered, "you'll get nothing. Not a single cent." His words cut deeper than the coffin in the ground. He looked at me as if I was already dead. And in that moment, something inside me broke. I wasn't angry yet, not yet. I was hollow, empty, like the house without her voice. But then, the lawyer looked up, not with pity, not with sorrow, but with the smallest laugh. A laugh that told me one thing: this wasn't over. Not for me, not for Mark, not for the truth my wife left behind. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own blood, stay with me. Because this story, my story, isn't about money. It's about respect and revenge. And if you believe justice should still mean something, subscribe. Stay here because what comes next will burn. I remember the day we buried her. Cold wind cut through the small town cemetery in Ohio. The church bell rang once, and then silence. I stood by her coffin, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the wooden box that held 45 years of my life. She wasn't just my wife. She was the reason I woke up each morning. Around me, whispers, neighbors in black coats, old friends offering empty words. But my son, Mark, stood apart. Not a tear, not a prayer. He checked his watch. He shook hands with men I didn't know. I searched his face. No grief, no sorrow, only calculation. And in that moment, my chest ached deeper than the cold. I wanted to believe it was shock, that grief turned him to stone. But his eyes told me something else, something darker. He was waiting for the reading of the will. The soil fell heavy on the coffin lid. The sound echoed like a final verdict. I whispered her name, barely audible, as if she might still hear me. Mark walked past me. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. And for the first time in 72 years, I felt truly abandoned. A week after the funeral, I sat alone in our old house in Ohio. The silence was unbearable. No footsteps in the kitchen, no soft hum of her voice, just the ticking clock on the wall. The door slammed. Mark walked in. No greeting, no warmth. He carried a leather folder under his arm. "Dad," he said flat, "I'll make this quick." His voice had no weight of grief, only business. He opened the folder. Papers shuffled. He pushed one toward me. "Mom's will is clear. You're not mentioned. You'll get nothing." My chest tightened. I stared at the paper, words blurring. Not mentioned? After 45 years of marriage? After raising him alone when money was short? After selling my car to pay his tuition? I looked up at him, hoped to see hesitation, remorse. But his eyes, cold, sharp, as if cutting me out of her life was his victory. I whispered, "Mark, your mother loved me." He smirked. "Love doesn't sign documents. This does." His finger tapped the page like a gavel. The room spun. Memories collided. Her laughter, her touch, her promise. And now this, my own blood erasing me with a sentence. I wanted to speak, to fight. But all I managed was silence. The kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. The kind that means war is coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head. "You'll get nothing." I sat in the dark, staring at the kitchen table. The same table where I once taught him how to read. The same table where we counted pennies to pay bills. I remembered the winter of '89. The furnace broke. The cold was brutal. I sold my car, my only car, just to keep the house warm. Mark was only 12. He never knew. I walked to school every day that winter, snow biting at my boots. I remembered the spring he got accepted to college. He was so proud. So was I. We had no money, but I emptied our savings. Every last dime. I even took an extra shift at the library, shelving books until my back screamed. And when his tuition came due, I sold her wedding ring. She cried that night, not because she lost it, but because she knew why I did it. For our son, I told her. Always for him. Now he sat in my house, tapping papers like I was a stranger, like those years meant nothing, like sacrifice had no memory. The silence of the kitchen was heavier than the grave. I pressed my hand against the table. The wood was scarred, scratched by decades of family meals, and I wondered, was I the fool, or was he always this cold? 2 days later, I walked into the law office downtown. The building smelled of old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where truth should matter. I carried an envelope in my coat pocket, her handwriting on the front, faded, fragile, the last letter she wrote me before the cancer took her. The receptionist looked up. "Mr. Miller?" I nodded. My throat was dry. The lawyer's office was small, lined with dusty books. He rose, shook my hand, studied my face. "Edward, I'm sorry for your loss." I couldn't speak. I just slid the envelope across his desk. My wife, she wanted me to have this. He opened it carefully, as if it might crumble. Inside, her words, simple, direct. "Edward, whatever happens, this house will always be yours. Trust me." My chest tightened. Her voice filled the room again, soft, steady, loving. For a moment, I felt her beside me. Then the door opened. Mark stepped in. Perfect suit, cold eyes. He didn't even glance at the letter. He tossed a thick folder onto the desk. "Let's not waste time," he said. "Dad, this is business. Nothing more." The lawyer's brow furrowed. He looked from me to Mark, back to the envelope. And in that silence, I felt the storm begin. Mark leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, smirked like a man who already won. He tapped the folder with one finger. "Here it is, Dad. Mom's will. All 12 million. Every cent. Left to me." The lawyer cleared his throat. He hadn't opened the folder yet, but Mark wasn't waiting. He leaned forward, voice sharp. "Face it. You were just her husband. I was her blood. That's all the court cares about." My jaw tightened. I gripped the edge of the chair until my knuckles burned. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Her words from the letter echoed, "This house will always be yours." But Mark's voice cut through, colder than winter wind. "You're old, weak, forgotten. You think she'd really trust you with 12 million? Don't fool yourself." The lawyer finally opened the folder. His brow furrowed. Pages shuffled. Something didn't look right. But Mark didn't care. He was too busy watching me, enjoying my silence. I wanted to shout, to slam my fist. But I didn't. I stared straight into his eyes. No tears, no begging, just silence. And that silence made him laugh. A low, cruel laugh that filled the room. The kind of laugh that told me one thing. He thought I was already beaten. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, turned another page. His brow furrowed deeper. Mark leaned forward. "What's the problem? Just confirm it. My mother's will, my inheritance." The lawyer didn't answer right away. He ran his finger across a line, stopped, looked closer, then back at me. "These signatures," he said slowly. "Something's off." My heart thudded. I leaned closer. The ink looked darker on one page than the others. Fresh. Too fresh for a will signed months before her death. Mark laughed. "You're overthinking. Paper ages differently. Everyone knows that." But his voice cracked on the last word. The lawyer shook his head. "Not like this. See the edges? Smudges on the seal. This isn't how she signed." I felt a chill run through me, because I remembered. Her hand shook near the end. But this signature, steady. Too steady. Mark slammed his hand on the desk. "Are you accusing me? My own father's right here. He knows Mom wanted me to have it all." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Because for the first time, I saw a fear in my son's eyes. Just a flicker. But it was there. And in that flicker, I knew. This wasn't just greed. This was something darker. Something forged. The lawyer's words echoed in the room. "Something's off." My pulse pounded. Mark argued, his voice sharp, desperate, but I drifted. Because in that moment, I heard her voice again. Clear, gentle, the way she spoke to me in our kitchen, months before the end. I see it now, the evening light pouring through the curtains, her frail hands clutching a cup of tea, her eyes, still sharp, still full of fire. She reached for my hand. "Edward," she whispered, "no matter what happens, this house will always be yours. Always." I didn't understand then. I thought she was just comforting me. But now, sitting in this office, her words felt heavier, as if she had seen this moment coming. Mark's voice pulled me back. Dad, don't listen to him. The will is mine. You know it. But her voice drowned his out. This house will always be yours. The lawyer shuffled more pages. Mark leaned closer, sweat at his temple. And I realized maybe she wasn't just giving me comfort. Maybe she was leaving me a clue. I clenched my fist under the desk, silent. But inside, a fire started to burn, because I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was part of her plan. That night, the house was too quiet. No ticking clock, no rustle of curtains, just silence pressing against the walls. I sat alone in the kitchen. The chair creaked beneath me. On the table, her photograph, our wedding day, her smile brighter than the sun, now only a shadow in a frame. I poured a glass of whiskey. The ice clinked, sharp in the emptiness. I raised it, whispered her name. It cracked in my throat. The words of my son burned in my head. You'll get nothing. Each syllable like a hammer, beating, breaking. I wanted to weep, but no tears came. Grief had already drained me dry. So I sat, staring at that photo, at the woman who had carried me through a lifetime, and I clenched my fist. The glass trembled, then shattered on the floor. I didn't flinch, because something had shifted inside me. The hollow man who left the lawyer's office, he was gone. What remained was sharper, colder, not the teacher I once was, not the father who sacrificed, but the man my wife believed in, the man she whispered to. This house will always be yours. And for the first time since she died, I wasn't just grieving, I was planning. The next morning I stepped outside. The sun was pale, weak against the Ohio sky. I needed air, anything to clear the storm in my chest. Mrs. Turner, my neighbor for 30 years, waved from her porch. She shuffled closer, her eyes cautious. I'm sorry about Mary, she whispered. I nodded, words still hard to find. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Edward, there's something you should know. My stomach tightened. Her hands trembled as she clutched her shawl. Last week, before Mary passed, I saw Mark. He wasn't alone. He was meeting a man. A notary, I think, but not from town. Someone I'd never seen before. The air turned colder. A stranger? A notary? Days before my wife died? I asked. Are you sure? She nodded, eyes wet. He carried a briefcase. Papers inside. I thought it was business. But the way they whispered, the way Mark looked around, like he didn't want anyone to see. My chest burned, because it all fit. The too fresh ink, the steady signature, the smudge seal. Mark hadn't just betrayed me. He had betrayed her memory. I clenched the porch railing. The wood groaned under my grip. Mrs. Turner touched my arm. Be careful, Edward. He's not the boy you raised. I looked at her. No tears, no more disbelief, only fire. Because now, I knew the truth. And the truth demanded justice. I didn't wait. That evening, I drove to Mark's house on the edge of town. The sky was dark, clouds heavy like judgment. He opened the door, annoyed. Dad? What now? I stepped inside. Didn't ask permission. The air smelled of expensive cologne, not grief. Papers scattered on the coffee table. Contracts. Bank statements. I pointed at them. You met with a notary. Days before your mother died. Why? His jaw tightened. He looked away, then laughed. You're losing it, old man. Grief's making you imagine things. I slammed my hand on the table. The papers shook. His eyes flickered. Fear, then rage. You forged it, I said. Calm. Cold. You forged your mother's will. Mark's face twisted. Red. Ugly. He leaned close, spit flying with every word. You think anyone will believe you? You're nothing. You're finished. Old. Weak. Forgotten. The words cut, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. I stared into his eyes, silent. He shoved me back, chest heaving. You're done, Dad. Done. The room shook with his rage. But inside me, a strange calm. Because his anger told me everything I needed. He was guilty, and I would prove it. 2 days later, I sat again in the lawyer's office. The same wooden desk. The same smell of paper and dust. Mark was there too. Arms crossed. Eyes burning holes through me. The lawyer cleared his throat. I've reviewed the documents you brought, Mark. And, Edward, I've also checked the county records. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a thick envelope, sealed, stamped, official. My breath caught. Mark leaned forward, eager, greedy, but the lawyer's hand didn't move toward him. It moved toward me. This, he said, was filed weeks before Mary's passing, kept under seal, untouched. I froze. My fingers trembled as I took the envelope. The seal was heavy, the wax deep red, her name written in careful strokes, her handwriting. I would know it anywhere. Mark's face drained of color. What is that? That's not the will I have. The lawyer's eyes narrowed. Exactly. I felt the room tilt. The air grew heavy, because in my hands wasn't just paper. It was truth. Her truth. For months I had lived in silence, in grief, in doubt. But as I held that envelope, I knew she hadn't left me behind. She had left me a weapon. Mark's face twisted red. He slammed his fist on the desk. Then, in a frenzy, he grabbed his own folder, the one he had brought in. Enough of this, he shouted. He ripped the seal, yanked out the pages. His hand shook, wild with fury. This is the only will that matters. Everything else, lies. The lawyer stayed seated, calm, silent, watching. Mark tore the first page in half. The sound echoed like thunder. Scraps fell across the floor. He ripped again, and again, each tear more desperate than the last. I didn't move, because I finally saw it. The truth. He wasn't just greedy, he was terrified. The mask of confidence was gone. All that remained was fear, naked, trembling. He threw the shredded pieces on the desk, breath ragged, eyes blazing. Now it's gone, he sneered. What will you do, old man? Without proof, you're nothing. The lawyer leaned back slowly, then spoke, calm, sharp as a blade. Mark, what you destroyed wasn't proof against your father. It was proof against you, a forgery. And now it's gone. The room went silent. Mark froze, and for the first time, he looked like the child I once knew, lost, cornered, afraid. The lawyer laid another envelope on the desk, clean, heavy, unbroken. Mark froze. His chest heaved. His eyes darted between me and the seal. This, the lawyer said firmly, is the certified original, filed with the court weeks before Mary passed, stored under state protection. Silence. Even the air stopped. He broke the seal with steady hands, unfolded the pages, read aloud. To my husband, Edward Miller, I leave the house, the trust, and the estate, to be managed in his name for the family's future. My breath caught. Her voice filled the room again, carried by ink and law. Mark staggered back. No, that's not possible. His voice cracked, desperate now. The lawyer's tone sharpened. Forgery is a crime, Mark. What you brought in was a forgery, and you destroyed it with your own hands. The color drained from his face, his smirk gone. Only fear remained. I didn't move, didn't gloat. I just sat there, staring at my son. Because this wasn't victory, it was justice. Cold, heavy, final. He whispered, almost to himself, Dad. But I said nothing. Some silences are louder than screams. And in that silence, the world shifted. I wasn't erased. I wasn't forgotten. I was the heir, the rightful heir, the man my wife always believed I would be. When it was over, I walked out of the lawyer's office. The wooden door closed behind me with a heavy thud. Outside, the evening sun hung low over the Ohio streets. Orange light stretched across the pavement, long and quiet. I stood there for a moment, breathing, letting the air fill my chest. For weeks I had been hollow, broken by grief, crushed by betrayal. But now, I felt something different. Not joy, not triumph, something colder, something sharper. Justice. It wasn't about $12 million. It wasn't about winning some game. It was about dignity, about not being erased, about proving that my wife's trust in me was never misplaced. Behind me, I could still hear Mark shouting, his voice muffled through the walls. Anger, fear, desperation. But it no longer reached me, because his words had lost their power. His lies had burned away in the light of truth. I stepped onto the street. Cars passed. Strangers walked by. No one knew what had just happened in that office. But I knew. And she knew. I looked at the sky, whispered her name. This house will always be mine, just like you promised. Then I turned and walked into the fading light. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory party, no champagne, no applause. I simply walked home, through the quiet streets of Ohio, through the neighborhood that had watched me grow old. When I opened the door, the house smelled the same. Her flowers still sat by the window. Her chair still leaned against the porch, and for the first time in weeks, I sat down without shaking. It wasn't about money. It was never about money. It was about respect, about truth, about not letting betrayal write the final chapter of my life. And maybe you know that feeling, the sting of betrayal, the silence after trust is broken, maybe from a friend, maybe from family, maybe from someone you once loved. If you do, tell me, tell us, because stories like mine aren't just mine. They belong to anyone who has ever been erased, cut out, cast aside. Drop your story below. What would you have done in my place? Be honest, I'll read every word. And if you want more stories like this, real stories of betrayal and justice, stay with us. Subscribe, because justice isn't loud. It's quiet, cold, and unforgettable.